This is Adam Bernard with AutoPerspectives and a look at the past week in the auto industry. And today we have a supersized episode of a sort because last week was the Supersized Auto Shanghai, which is the biennial Shanghai Motor Show, which switches places every other year with the Beijing Motor Show. So we will touch on some of the notable new products unveiled there. This is the Mercedes Vision V, and it previews the next V-Class or V family that is due to go into production next year. Now, a few years ago, Mercedes announced plans for a new van architecture called Van.EA. This is intended to be an all-electric platform. It will be sold alongside the current V-Class, which will continue to evolve and offer internal combustion variants for Mercedes commercial customers, but this is intended to leverage the best of Mercedes EV technology. It will source a new VLS luxury van as well as a more square, mundane-looking van targeted at commercial customers. This is an 800-volt architecture. It has single and dual motor configurations. Up front, you do see an interpretation of the Mercedes grille. Those are not bars. Those are actually LEDs to create the illusion of bars. And those are giant 24-inch wheels, which may or may not actually make it into production. Now, you might wonder why this vehicle was shown in Shanghai. The Chinese market loves luxury vans. Lexus actually has the LM luxury van, which is based on a Japan market Toyota van. Other automakers have been exploring the space. Even Audi did a concept a few years back. Around back, the Vision V has a tail lamp ribbon with 450 three-dimensional illuminated louvers. Now, I mentioned the VLS, which will be the flagship, and that's what we're more or less looking at here. You got to tone it down for production. There will also be a VLE. That will be the more mainstream non-luxury version. It will look a lot like this without all the extra content. The VLS, of course, is expected to be the S-Class of vans, just as the GLS is the S-Class of SUVs. And that VLS, for the first time, is expected to come to North America. Up to now, we've only seen Mercedes commercial vans in North America. We haven't seen the passenger variants that have been on sale in other markets. The interior is probably a little further removed from production than the exterior, especially some of the trim and materials that you see here. Mercedes describes it as a private lounge with 42 speakers, a 65-inch screen for the two rear passengers, and 7 projectors to create a 360-degree viewing experience. There is a fragrance diffuser, ambient lighting, karaoke, and gaming capabilities. Up front, you get a full-width super screen, similar to what we see on the new Mercedes CLA, and illuminated storage areas, which are glass cabins surrounded by polished aluminum. The seats themselves are upholstered in Napa leather and silk. So while the general IP layout is likely to make it to production, a lot of the other materials and cool lighting effects that you see here will not make it. But Mercedes does obviously see an opportunity for the brand to get into the van segment in China with so many other of the Chinese brands already there and leveraging Mercedes history in the van segment. And obviously doing a dedicated electric platform will allow them to offer more efficient EV to their commercial customers as well. So probably early next year is when we'll see the production version of the new family of Mercedes vans. This is an Audi, but not an Audi, it's an Audi. All right, a little confusing. So Audi was the first luxury brand to enter China back in 1988, and apparently there was perception that the current Audi brand was losing favor among Chinese customers. So they decided to create a new brand specifically for the Chinese market. And that new brand is called Audi. So it's all capital letters, and you'll see there's no 4 rings. That's just traditional Audi logo. And it is a completely different set of hardware from the Volkswagen Group-based Audis that have been on sale there for decades. And this has been done in conjunction with their joint venture partner, which is SAIC, Shanghai Auto, and it uses their platform with Audi styling and, of course, Audi marketing. This vehicle, which is the E5 Sportback, is expected to be joined by several other mid-market luxury cars and SUVs. The E5 is around the size of the Audi A6 e-tron Avant that was recently introduced. Proportions are a little different, and again, it lacks some of the design cues that make the A6 e-tron and Audi non-capital letters, but with 4 rings. Up front, the single frame grille that we've seen on other Audis has been replaced by what they call a light frame with more than 1,000 individual light units. There are available welcome animations, including one inspired by Shanghai's skyline. And we all know that a lot of the Chinese automakers have really been using light as kind of the new chrome, which is a phrase that VW has been using for a while as well. The E5 offers up to 776 horsepower for 0 to 60 in about 3.5 seconds, and an EPA equivalent range of about 360 miles. So good, not Tesla or Lucid great, but still very good. It is an 800 volt architecture, which means it charges pretty fast. Audi claims about 170 miles EPA equivalent in 10 minutes. It also offers a four-wheel steering and an adaptive air suspension for leading ride and handling characteristics. There is a LiDAR sensor suite that can detect both tricycles and cyclists, and a parking assistant that can memorize paths across parking garages and navigate to a specific spot before the vehicle actually parks itself. The interior also looks quite a bit different from some of the newer Audis that have hit the market of late, like the A6 e-tron and the Q6 e-tron. It has a 27-inch wide 4K screen powered by a new Audi developed operating system for China. There are concealed air vents and a fragrance diffuser. There's facial recognition and a voice assistant developed by ByteDance. ByteDance is the parent company of TikTok. And the doors feature a pioneering three-dimensional lamella-shaped wood inlays with indirect light. So the vehicle itself looks pretty impressive. The technical specs are as good as anything you get from a Chinese-branded EV or a Tesla or a Lucid. Is the marketing confusing? It is to me. I'm not in China, and so it may make more sense to folks who live there. We'll see how it succeeds, and we'll see what else shows up in the new Audi portfolio over the next few years. This is the Geely Battleship. This is a mid-market, very boxy-looking SUV, and if you're getting hints of Land Rover Defender and Toyota Land Cruiser, that is probably completely intentional. It's got a lot of cues that you would expect to find on a Land Rover, like the round headlamps up front and the little cargo element there around the C-pillar. There is an AI-assisted system that switches between EV, hybrid, and EREV modes, and also adapts to different terrains automatically. Even though Geely doesn't have a lot of experience doing off-road vehicles, they decided to throw everything here, so it is extremely capable. It can do crab walks, it can do tank turns, it can float in the water at about 5 miles an hour for about 2 hours, and there is wading sonar and radar to aid in the event that you happen to need to cross a river. Picking up more cues, there's also a side-mounted roof ladder, Volvo-style vertical tail lamps, and a multifunctional tailgate that includes storage compartments. Now, we've seen in China a lot of automakers getting into the SUV business, and not just the SUV business, but SUVs that either can go off-road just about anywhere or look like they can. And so Geely needed to get a piece of the action here, using their own brand to do so, as opposed to creating a new brand within their already vast empire of additional brands. The interior features a passenger side display, which they call the Exploration Kit. And on the center console is what they call the Off-Road Control Island, which is inspired by yacht design. It remains connected to the outside world via Geely's satellite network. So in the event that you happen to be in the middle of nowhere and your cell phone is not getting a signal, you can connect directly to Geely's own network. Now, they didn't provide any performance specs, but they do note the battery pack is a bulletproof coating resistant to deformation, fire, and explosion. So again, no matter where you want to go with this vehicle, it should be able to take you there and survive the process. Now, I confess I have a soft spot in my heart for Buick because I own a 1963 Buick Electra. And here in the US, the Electra name has some cachet for people who remember Buicks from the 60s and the 70s. The Electra name probably doesn't mean as much to the Chinese buyer, but Buick felt a need to resurrect it in China as a new sub-family of vehicles. Now, they already have the Electra E5 and E4 SUVs, but now the Electra family was unveiled at the Shanghai Motor Show, complete with what you see here, the GS, which is a full-size flagship sedan. Now, it is not 225 inches long, so it is not a deuce and a quarter, but it is a big sedan, so even bigger than a Tesla Model S or a Lucid Air. It is long, low, and fairly aggressively cab forward. If you've seen some of the newer Buicks, you'll recognize some of the design cues here. Underneath the Electra GS and the other new Electras is the multi-energy Xiaoyao architecture, which is multi-energy, so it is capable of sourcing electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids, or extended range EVs. The GS features 23-inch wheels and a full-length glass roof. I personally think it's kind of a nice-looking vehicle. Do I get Electra when I look at it? Necessarily not really. But again, Buick is trying to kind of move into a more contemporary design aesthetic here. Running the Electra is an LFP battery from Cattle. These batteries will charge it up to 640 kilowatts. Now, keep in mind, here in the US, most 800-volt vehicles will top out at about a 350 kilowatt charge rate. So that would get the Electra about 165 miles, EPA equivalent in 10 minutes. The catch, of course, is that you do need to get to a charger that's capable of charging your vehicle at 640 kilowatts. So there is some infrastructure challenge connected to it. The interior of the new Electra GS is trimmed in leather, woven fabric, and metal. It features a giant 16.3-inch passenger side display, an augmented reality head-up display, yoke-style steering, not unlike the new Tesla, which has not been received all that well, to be perfectly honest. But there are at least physical controls for the air conditioning and the heating. Buick also notes the 5 constant comfort system, which focuses on temperature, humidity, oxygen levels, air purity, and noise levels within the vehicle. One of the hallmarks of the Buick brand has been the quiet ride, so they did attempt to kind of imbue this concept with some Buick heritage. You might recall that the Denza brand started life as a joint venture between BYD and Mercedes, and the initial Denza vehicle was a new energy, kind of mid-market, compact crossover, monocab kind of vehicle. Denza is now wholly owned by BYD. It is now a premium brand that is going after companies like Porsche, and more aggressively, the 911 with this particular Z concept. We don't have any powertrain details on the Z concept. It is likely to share the layout from the Z9 GT, which is already in market. That's a tri-motor setup that generates 952 horsepower. So that should provide, again, plenty of get up and go. It is a 2+2, unlike the 911, which is 2 people and basically 2 shopping bags. So slightly more functional. And of course, the giant rear wing. The Denza brand is already being exported to Europe. And so if this vehicle hits the market, which is not entirely out of the question at this point, we'd expect to see this show up there as well. One of the 2 notable technologies here is first is steer-by-wire, which allows a fold-away steering wheel, makes it a little easier to get in and out of the Z, and the magnetorheological shocks that can change the damping force in 10 milliseconds. So this can respond very quickly to changes in the driving surface and make sure that you stay stuck to the road at all times. One of the notable production debuts in Shanghai was the new Lexus ES. You might recall that back in 1989, when the Lexus brand was unveiled, the ES was the entry-level Lexus sedan. Well, the ES is now all grown up. It's larger than a Tesla Model S or a Lucid Air, and it's only 4 inches shorter than the flagship LS sedan. Up front, the controversial spindle grille has been de-emphasized. There's now a broad character line down the side of the vehicle as well to kind of break up the appearance. And it does have a more aggressive fastback profile and kind of the unusual Lexus-shaped lighting units up front. The platform is largely carried over from the current ES, so that's the TNGA-K architecture. We see it under the Camry here in North America and the Highlander. It does get an updated multi-link rear suspension. If some of the design cues look familiar, they should. Lexus showed the LFZL concept in 2023, which was supposed to portend the future of Lexus design. So now we're seeing some of those ideas starting to hit production. The rear light bar features the word Lexus spelled out instead of the Lexus logo, which we're seeing a lot of other automakers do. And most significantly, under the hood, as it were, every Lexus ES is now electrified in one form or another. The base models, the 300 and the 350h, are a 2-liter or 2.5-liter hybrid, and now we have a 350e and a 500e, and those are fully electric vehicles. So now TNGA-K is a multi-energy architecture capable of sourcing both hybrid and fully electric vehicles, and we expect other TNGA-K vehicles to in the future become electric or offer electric capability as well. One disappointing thing probably with the new ES are the power levels. The EV maxes out at about 338 horsepower. That's about half the horsepower of Audi's new E5, which sits roughly in the same part of the market. The hybrid maxes out at only 248 horsepower. So while I'm sure it's very fuel efficient, fun to drive may not be something that figures in here. The EV offers a maximum range of about 300 miles. That's Lexus's estimate. That is okay for a luxury vehicle. Probably not as competitive as it needs to be. And the 150 kilowatt charge rate is probably substandard, as most luxury automakers are moving to 800 volt capabilities. The interior is pretty minimalist. It has a capacitive touch bar below the center screen. There's a toggle style gear shift and some nice available bamboo trim. So this will be on sale later this year, not only in China, but in other markets around the world. Nissan has been a little slow to market with plug-in hybrids, but in China we saw their first plug-in hybrid pickup truck. Now this is the Nissan Frontier Pro plug-in hybrid. But don't be confused. This is different from what Nissan sells in other markets, including the Frontier that they sell here in the US. It's also different from the Frontier, otherwise known as the Navara, which is sold in some other markets outside the US. This vehicle is derived from the Z9 pickup that was co-developed with their partner Dongfeng. Under the hood of this Frontier Pro plug-in is a 1.5 liter, 402 horsepower powertrain with more than about 60 miles of EV range, at least in the EPA equivalent setting. There's an electromechanical rear differential lock, a retractable power roll-top bed cover, and V2L capability, just like we see in the latest Hyundai and Kia EVs. Inside, it's nicer than you think with available heated, cooled, and massaging seats. But this leaves Nissan with a bit of a quandary. They now have 4 mid-sized truck entries throughout the world. They have our own US market Frontier, which is based on a very old platform and is only sold here in North America. There is the Nissan Navara, which is sold around the world as the Frontier in some markets. Then in South America, there's a Nissan Navara, but Nissan has said they're working on an updated version of that truck just for South America. So that means the South American Navara now deviates from the Navara in the rest of the world. And then, of course, they have the Nissan trucks here in China. So, you could argue that it's important to tailor vehicles to the tastes of local buyers, but you could also argue that economies of scale should allow you to maybe do a truck that shares a lot of parts worldwide with some minor tailoring for different reasons. It's unclear if this is necessarily the best way for Nissan to go, but it does give them, working with Dongfeng, a plug-in hybrid truck, which we see other automakers like BYD just getting into the truck market and offering that same sort of technology. And that about wraps things up for AutoPerspectives for this week. As I said, there was a lot going on in Shanghai, and I just hit kind of the top 6 that caught my eye, but there's plenty of other coverage out there. If you like what you see and hear, please subscribe and share, and we will see you back here next week with whatever happens to be new in this business. Thanks for listening.